Waushara Community Church presents the Mixing Bowl Podcast. Hey church, welcome to another episode of the Mixing Bowl Podcast, and we are on our second episode talking about Christmas, and today we're going to talk about symbolism in Christmas, or Christmas symbolism. You want to say it that way. So I guess we'll jump right in. I'm assuming you know all the answers to these questions because I don't. Where did the idea for Christmas come from?
Sure. Here's the truth, right? Historically, there's a lot of debate.
Sure.
So we have to talk a little about Easter, which is fun because you can't have Easter without Christmas, right? But Easter and the celebration of the resurrection was a early historical event that historians can point to that, hey, there were Christians celebrating this in the 1st and 2nd century. And so you have to think about like celebrations and how the church goes. Like our culture today has consumerized Christmas in its shape. So when we talk about Christmas, more so in this podcast, it'll be about what Christmas should be.
Sure.
The celebrating of Jesus coming into this world, of God the incarnate becoming man to give his life for us, right? That's the celebration of Christmas, to say God has stepped into the world for us. And so historically there is no because birthdays weren't really a celebration thing, like in the same way they are today, right? You know, you celebrate your birth, people give you presents, you know, whatever. I don't know what happens.
I hope you get presents. I don't get presents.
I don't either, but that's a purposeful, right? But anyway, so the birthdays weren't really celebrated, so there's not like historical. You don't really see the birth of Christ being celebrated in the church until about the 4th century. So there's and then there was like debates about when Jesus is born. It's Passover, which is actually in the spring. They're not sure, right? So there's this. They're trying to figure out what time frame. It's not specifically Passover, so they're trying to. So what has been historically given is 2 dates, and then there's some like confusion, right? So, and we'll talk about that because I think it's important to understand, because this is actually a question that probably arises from someone who doesn't have any church background, who's just trying to deny Jesus. Yeah. So historically, there's 2 dates: December 25th and January 6th. And so what has happened is January 6th is actually Epiphany, and so like there's this celebration. The 12 days of Christmas are actually from December 25th to there, because there's this debate of, okay, Jesus is December 25th, but some other people think it's January 6th, and so a lot of those traditions started to be created because of that. Now, what some historians believe, and it could be accurate, I don't know, right? And it doesn't matter, and I'll talk about that in a second, but there was a celebration, a pagan celebration for the sun, solstice, longest day of the year. And so what happened was Christians wanted to celebrate, but they wanted to celebrate Jesus, but they wanted to, Christians want to have a fun time too, right? Like that's kind of and I don't agree, right? We want to make church exciting, not because Jesus isn't exciting, because, we want it to be fun because God is fun and what he's doing is awesome. And so there were pagan celebrations around this time of year. And so what is often attributed to Christmas starting is, well, the church saw this, they wanted to kind of have their own thing, so they slapped Christmas. They slapped Jesus' birth celebration at this point and said, we're going to do this. I've known about this for many, many years. I'm not shocked when someone asks me this question. It is a question that sometimes Christians get asked. Like, well, did you know your holiday is not even a real thing? Yes. The answer is yes. We know that Christmas was not a biblical celebration. It was, though, right? Go look at Luke chapter 2. It's a huge celebration. And a lot of the symbolism of Christmas comes from the Bible. Not in the sense of like, it was created for that specific reason, but all of the symbolism of Christmas, for the most part, has deep biblical ties, whether that was their intention or not, right?
Sure.
Yeah, God uses all things for his good.
Yeah.
And so I think there is, historically, we really don't know. But Christmas as a Christian celebration has been done for 1,500 years probably.
Sure.
So it's not a new concept. It's not something that we should be like, oh, has this become too commercialized? The answer is yes, it has been. It's not. Is it something that we can focus on? I think so. I think it's really cool, and I think the symbolism of Christmas can be really, really worshipful. But we have to understand some of the historical, right? We could get into a really long conversation about it, but I wanted to give some tidbits because I think it's important for us to understand some of those pieces, because I've had those questions. I remember as a young college student actually being asked that question, not at college, but somewhere else. Of like, I was talking to someone, and they were kind of like a gotcha statement of like, I'm gonna get you. Did you know that Christmas wasn't originally about Jesus? Yes, I did. I was aware of that fact, right? It's okay, right? There are things that we don't know the exact dates of things, but it's okay to celebrate God and what he's done. And so I think that's what we take from Christmas. Like, it's just a beautiful opportunity for the church to come together and say, hey, let's look at what Christ has done. What it means for him to step into this world, what it means for the celebration of his birth, what that meant for us, like the tapestry that God wove throughout Scripture to get us to that point, and then what it means today. Like, those are the reasons you celebrate Christmas. And so this is why I think the symbolism of Christmas is really cool, is because all of those things that we do should point us to the celebration of all of that.
Yeah.
But does it? And that's the question, or the struggle I think people have.
Sure. And it's always good to just point back to Scripture, right? Like, come back to Scripture and dive in. And so as we do that, what are some of the symbols that we see in Scripture that give us a reason for celebration, or wherever you're going with what you have?
Yeah, no, I think it's fine, right? Like, we have all kinds of traditional Christian symbols, and I Christmas symbols. I mean,
sure.
that are attributed to just the celebration of the season, not necessarily of Jesus.
Sure.
And so there are traditions for some of these things, but I think what happens a lot of times is we just do them, right? Like, everyone puts up a tree, everyone covers it in lights, everyone, buys a present or two for someone, and so there's a tradition of that. There's a tradition for wreaths, and there's a tradition for the star. Like, people put those on top of their trees, or the angels, or whatever, right? Like, why? Oh, I guess I never thought about it, right? Like, we've just always done it. Like, we've always had gifts, or we've always had lights. We've always had, we just see the symbols, but we don't actually think about their meaning. And the reality is like, we historically don't know the individual meanings. Was this brought about for this reason, right? And I think the important thing to understand at the end of the day is that it doesn't really matter. It matters how you choose to see those things. So these can be symbolic to the celebration that you see in Scripture. So you just think about, like, hymns, right? Music in general. Christmas is full of really, really incredible hymns. It's full of really, really cool Christmas songs. And it's full of some really terrible ones. But, right? A lot of people, December 1st or the day after Thanksgiving, their radios, their music becomes Christmas until December 25th. And we don't think about that, right? Is there symbolism to the singing in Christmas? well, what happens in the birth of Jesus, right? The angels show up and they start singing. And so we hear the songs, we sing the songs, but we don't think about the angels come to celebrate and worship Jesus, right? And so our singing should be attributed to this. Hey, we are actively celebrating and worshiping Jesus. And so the Christmas symbolism is just so deeply entwined. Whether its roots come from Christianity or not doesn't even matter. It's how we intend. It's like we talked about with traditions. It's the intention behind them. If they become a lack of focus, right? If your traditions and your symbolism for Christmas is getting in the way of worshiping the King, get rid of them. Like, it's not worth it. It's not worth it. But if they can point to Jesus, right? And so I think there's just a lot of them, right? You think of the tree. Do you have a tree in your house? Have you put up a tree? No tree?
Not yet, but we will.
Yeah, so you'll have a tree, right? I have family members that put up their tree Christmas Eve, and then they take it down on Epiphany.
Sure.
And so, which I'm, tree can go up whenever I feel like, and in November, and we take it down whenever we have energy to. But think about the tree, right? The tree's pretty intentional, whether we think about it or not. The tree is an evergreen tree typically, which is a symbol of life because it doesn't die in the winter. It doesn't lose its needles. Jesus was crucified on a tree. And so there's this picture of life through the tree. And we don't think about that necessarily, right? We just go hey, this tree looks good. Or in our case, hey, this tree was really cheap at Walmart one year.
Right.
And it has been our tree for a long time now, and we're going to keep, right? But even the adornment of the tree, right? Typically, trees are adorned with lights, and light has such significance in who Jesus is. Yeah. And everyone probably forgot at this point, but a few weeks ago, Jesus is the light of the world, right? This is talking about what happened when Jesus entered this world. The light came into the world, and darkness could not handle it. And so you just constantly have these constant forms of symbolism in there. You put stars atop your tree. What happened? What was the guiding light to Jesus? The wise men, wherever they came from out in Asia, they followed a light, a star, to find Jesus, right? We put a guiding star upon this tree. And so we have this symbolism that begins to permeate all of what we do at Christmas, and I think we can just easily ignore it. Or even gifts, right? Gifts became synonymous. Where do you see gifts in the story? Well, Jesus is given gifts. Funnily enough, he is given gifts for preparation for his burial. Yeah. But he is given gifts, and so this tradition of Jesus coming into this world was a gift to us from God to say, hey, I'm going to give myself for you. And so we give gifts out of this desire to say, hey, I love you and I care for you, and my Father has given me good gifts and I want to give good gifts too. And so even that, I think it's the 4th or 5th century, St. Nicholas, comes about. He takes on this tradition of giving gifts to orphaned kids in orphanages and stuff like that. And so that these things permeate. Even the simple like candy cane, right? They come in like a variety of flavors and colors now, and
sure,
all of them are better than peppermint in my opinion. But
totally agree.
I cannot stand peppermint. I know my wife loves it. She, I think when she first saw the peppermint ice cream in the store, she had to get some, and I tried it, and I was like, it's so gross. I can't stand the flavor. But the candy cane, right? It's a shepherd's crook. You turn it the other way, it's a J. It's symbolic. It's red and white. It both shows the blood of Christ and the purification that happens, right? So the tradition of Christmas is so full of symbolic things pointing to the story of Jesus. So you can go into Scripture and you can see the things. I am the way, the truth, and the life. Life in the tree and the wreath in this perfect eternal circle, right? Like they're symbolic, but they can just be objects on the wall.
Yeah,
it can just be something that we just do this. And I think that's the challenge, but also the like incredibly coolness, I think, of Christmas. Like, why do we do this? What is it we want to do? How do we want to do it? Are we intentional about it? Like, I think about the symbolism of the things that you grew up seeing in the culture, right? Like what took place over the years and how it shifted.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think about what are things you saw as a kid at Christmas that maybe do or don't exist today. A spur of a moment question.
Yeah. I don't know. You know what? I spent so many years out of the country. I'm not I notice.
Where's there symbolism in Korea? Christmas symbolism in Korea. How was Christmas celebrated in Korea? Was it?
Not really.
Yeah.
I mean, I think for believers, they might do stuff, but my family didn't really do much, and my wife's family. The only stores that would decorate, at least when we left, right, were really big department stores that were usually Western department stores that were trying to get people in for new things for the season that they might not already have. I think it's different now too because I don't care about as much stuff as I did when I was young. You know, I might think of Christmas time, and even though in Wisconsin, very rarely is it a white Christmas, right? I think of skating and hot chocolate.
Sure.
And that's where those candy canes came into play. You just
Stir your hot chocolate.
Yes, in your hot chocolate. There's a lot of chocolate in my house. There's a lot of chocolate eaters in my house.
Tradition. Gotta have the chocolate.
Yeah. I guess that's a tradition. I think for probably most people, but felt like stockings.
Sure.
This is like an individual gift, right? That you you knew was prepared.
That has a Christmas tradition, like a Christian one, and I can't remember it off the top of my head.
Well, hey, this is an invitation for people to go
look
it up.
History. Yeah, it's. Did you have stockings as a kid?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So we actually had these really ornate ones that my great grandmother, I think, or as a great aunt, I don't remember for sure, but hand sewed each of the kids in my family their own stocking that were very ornate with sequins and not gaudy. Like, they were really beautiful stockings. And so I still have that. And actually, that is, now that I'm saying this out loud, like, this is a little bit of sadness for my kids that they don't have something so individual. Like, they have our names on them.
Sure.
Right? And so not only are they ornate, but, like, they were made just for you.
That's fun.
And so over the years, I might have to do some digging. Maybe one of these years I'll make. I probably won't make it personally, but maybe I'll find a way to get them made. Because that was a really meaningful thing to us as kids, was that, this was made just for you. And so the celebration of the things, good or bad, it's not like there were usually Christ-focused items put inside of those. It was mostly candy, but it was just meaningful to us then.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. It's interesting that, I was trying to think of the symbolism I saw as a kid, and I was like, I don't know. Like, I mean, I saw a lot, right? Like, I saw a lot of what you see today, but I can't tell if it's more or less, right? Like, I can't picture it in my mind whether it's more or less. Like, I would say I hear more arguments maybe against Christmas than I would have ever as a child, but I don't know that I see less of the symbolism. Like, I think I've seen more nativity scenes on my way home from work than I can remember seeing.
Sure.
And so it's just the symbolism is present, but I don't ever want to get to a place where I just forget it's there. Like, I want to see the importance of why, the importance of saying, hey, this tree means more than just being a tree, right? Yeah, it's fun, it's pretty, it's nice to have lights in the darkness, right? I think of this season, I think of like Thanksgiving, the symbolism in my mind of Thanksgiving to Christmas, and this attitude of invitation to be very thankful of what's taken place this year into a season of celebrating what Jesus has done and being thankful for all that he has given to us in this year, and it didn't just really celebrate who he is and what he did in coming and what he will do in coming again. Like, that's incredible to me. And so to have lights like in the darkness, to say, it's dark at like 4:40 now, to be able to drive around and be like, no, there's tons of lights up, and like to see more and more come up. My thought of those lights isn't just, oh, that's pretty. It's, oh, no, God's light shines in the darkness. And so that's a really, really cool way to like perceive the goodness of God in the midst of the season, to see the symbols and go, oh no, that tree means more than that. Those lights mean more than that. That star on top of the tree was symbolic. Like, even the angels singing, the songs we sing, all of those symbols are meant to draw us back into focus, right? Like, it's kind of what a Sunday morning is meant to be, is like this weekly focus where the church goes, oh yeah, we can breathe because we're all together bearing the same burdens together. Yeah. Okay, now we can go out and do the things we need to do for the week. We don't stop gathering, we don't stop worshiping, but now we're kind of either potentially alone or in a smaller group doing it, and then we come back as a whole body and gather. Christmas is like this, just very intentional, seeing all the symbols and going, oh, I want to focus. I want to focus back on all these things. I want to see the star and think about how it has led to Jesus, not how it's a decoration. Yeah. Right? Like, I want to look at candy canes and not think about how I don't like them. If you get me with like one of the like fruity flavored ones, I'm all about those.
I think part of the reason we don't, to kind of go back to your question before, I think part of the reason we don't see them as much is, I think collectively we are out in the world less than we used to be. We used to do more community-focused events, I think, in the past.
Sure.
So we were out in schools more often, out at church more often, in the church building, out doing stuff. I am here at the church, maybe the grocery store, and my house.
I can see that.
In the school, when I absolutely have to go do stuff for my kids. But if I'm being honest, I don't look forward to go sitting on hard bleachers as a 43-year-old for 2 hours at a time. Yeah. So I think that's part of it, which makes it probably makes me recognize things more because I'm seeing stuff less. Yeah. But we also have the benefit of, even though it's not technically part of the Bible Belt, Wisconsin could be the side loops of the Bible Belt, really. And so we have a lot of people who aren't necessarily believers in most of Wisconsin, but are not as against.
Sure. Yeah. It made me think about this. Has the culture, not the church. I think it's impacted the church, and this could be another conversation for another day, but we've lost the sense of community. Like, even when we're together, and I'm not talking about the church, I'm talking about individual society and the culture, even in like a football game or basketball game or band competition, whatever, right? Like, we're individually there in a group of a bunch of people, rather than we're all there to celebrate the same things. And so I think that's the beauty of a Sunday morning. That's the beauty of Christmas. Yeah. To say, hey, we're going to all be united in this one thing, and it's a celebration of Jesus. And then we hope, right, that permeates our entire year, our everyday.
Yeah.
And so I think there's something to be said there, because, I try to be as involved in the community as I can be. And I think there's still always going to be that lack of unity. And that's something that I will say this very clearly. And I think this would be true of our church people. I think that would be, if I could pinpoint one thing that probably 80 to 99% of the church would say, is like, I want to know how to live in biblical community. I need that. And they may not be able to express those words, and that's a lot of the culture we're trying to build here. But I think it's right. It's understanding and seeing what's going on. This is why I think symbols are such an important part of the season. It's going, hey, this goes beyond just being a Christmas symbol. No, this has roots to my relationship with Jesus. And I think that's what I want to encourage people to see as they drive around, as they're getting a gift. They're not thinking about just, hey, will my kid or my grandson or my nephew or whatever, like, will they enjoy this? Think about, how do I honor God in this moment? How do I celebrate the gift that Jesus has given me? How's my tree more than just a tree? How are my lights? The one thing I like about lights is it is a very physical reaction, right? The lights truly light up the darkness, and that's what Jesus has done. And so the symbols of the season can draw us into an act of worship that I think we can miss if we're not paying attention. So that's really why I wanted to kind of have this conversation. So
yeah, that's so good. That's a great way to end. May the symbols that we see this Christmas season draw us closer to Christ and cause us to worship more fully this Christmas season. Well, thanks for joining us. We may have a couple other Christmas episodes. We may not. We'll see. But we're glad that you joined us for this one. We encourage you to jump into the email that we sent out for Advent readings. And hopefully you can stay with us. Just join in with your whole family to read through Scripture in this season so that you have deeper cause and understanding for worshiping Christ as we gather together each Sunday, as you gather together with your family to look forward to Christmas, and then on Christmas Eve as you gather together, whether it's your immediate family, extended family, or friends, whoever it is, that you could draw everyone's attention towards Christ. Thanks for joining us.
Play sweet elevator music.